Hello, and welcome to Composer's Voice. Composer's Voice is a platform providing a stage for new and emerging composers to showcase their works. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Welcome to Composer's Voice. So, why don't you tell us your name and a little about yourself?
I'm Charlie Rauh. I'm a composer, mostly a composer and a studio musician, and I recently, in the past couple of years, started venturing more and more into writing. The way that I compose often is taking inspiration from literature and trying to translate the intention of it into music.
And tell me a little bit more about, how you work with literature and music.
So I started a few years ago just trying to come up with a way to continuously have inspiration to compose. And I started thinking of all the things I like to read, a lot of poetry and some short stories and some memoirs. And then I started trying out the idea of translating it, or the way I look at it is translating the poem or the written piece into music. So not as much reacting to it, but trying to move it into a new medium. So if the poem were a song, what would it sound like? So the whole point that I was going for, and that I continue to go for, is to translate intention in a way that's accessible to people, either listening or playing or just enjoying in any way that they like. So the most recent project I have is called Theoria. But that project was a commission, a composer residency, where I was invited to go to Louisiana State University to be composer in residence at the veterinary school, to work with the doctors and the animal patients to try to compose wellness-oriented music. And the way that came about was from this idea of translating intention. When I met Sandy Sarr at the Festival of Words, a literary conference in Louisiana years ago, I was doing a co-workshop with Cornelius Eady. But Sandy was there, and that's where we met. We started talking. At the time, I didn't know that she worked at LSU. So about 4 years later, it was, I think, that she contacted me in 2022. And she said, I don't know if you remember, we had this conversation about translating intention, the way that you create music trying to translate intention. Would you be interested in being a composer in residence at LSU Vet Med, at the veterinary school and hospital? And I was like, yeah, I don't know exactly what that means or how I would do it. And because no one has before, as far as we know, there hasn't been a composer in residence at a veterinary school before. So I just said yes. And I was like, yeah, let's figure it out. And it wound up being this amazing experience, this project, where I spent time with animals and doctors and just trying to absorb the atmosphere of that wellness, that pursuit of wellness, and translating that idea, which is what Sandy specifically asked. She's like, if you work with translating the intention of literature into music, would you be up for trying to translate the pursuit of wellness into music, to make wellness-oriented music? which, you know, we had a lot of conversations with the doctors and spent a lot of time with the animals, and it started unraveling and becoming more and more obvious of what this needed to be, that it needed to be music of direct intention, and it's not enough to just kind of, oh, you know, let me go on YouTube and put on a gentle music playlist.
Right.
That's not going to do the same thing as music that's created specifically for this purpose.
Sure.
So that is the latest project that I've done, and one of the interesting things about it was I'm a solo guitar composer, but I was kind of put in this weird situation on top of making music for animals in a hospital, which was already strange and difficult and challenging and amazing. But they also asked me if I would compose choral music for the LSU A Cappella Choir, which was a really amazing experience, writing for a 4-part choir with this intention, because we've seen how the animals reacted to the choir music and the guitar music, and it was very interesting, because at first we were like a little bit concerned maybe the choir would be too dynamic for an animal, as the guitar is a lot, you can keep it, you know,
right,
a little more flatline. But a lot of animals that have heard the choir music really responded to it. And the responses we saw from the animals while I was there, it was pretty fascinating, because it seemed, at least to me and to several of the doctors I worked with, it seemed that the music was creating a context that made wellness and sort of medical treatment make sense.
Right.
And that was the fun part to witness. I've mentioned a few examples, but one of them that was really nice was an elderly dog that couldn't really hear too well was having osteopathy work done. So, you know, having sort of like deep massages and pulling on muscles, and, you know, they were kind of uncomfortable, but like, I got called down to try this. They're like, do you want to try playing the music while we do this osteopathy session going on? And I was sitting on the other end of the room where they couldn't see me.
Okay.
And I started, you know, playing some of the music, and it was really nice, because the dog was, you know, at first we thought the dog couldn't even hear it, that I was just kind of there, and we were just seeing what would happen. And then in a break in the treatment, the dog got up, turned around, walked over, and while I was playing, put the top of her head against the guitar.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and so she could feel it. And not only could she feel the vibrations, but it was something that drew her closer. So that was a really interesting and sweet, you know, example of seeing evidence that there is an effect of intention. It seemed like the intention was, you know, reaching the patient, and through all the conversations I had with the doctors, it was just a really amazing experience for us to combine, you know, the world of science and the world of art with mutual respect and see what we could do. And there's ongoing research happening with several of the doctors there that I'm still in touch with, and where we're trying to explore these things. I think it's really important to care about what the listener thinks. That might sound like an oversimplification, but the way I look at music and the way I looked at it at LSU and the way I look at it in general is similar to what you and I are doing right now. I liken it one-to-one to a conversation.
Yep.
I will be exactly who I am and speak with you and express what I think. And I'm not going to change that based on speaking to you or anyone else. But it's very important to me that you receive what I say in a way that hopefully you enjoy.
Right. Well, you want to make a connection.
Yeah. So for me, that's a huge part of, like working with the animals at the hospital. That was part of the directive. It's like make music that engages both humans and animals and encourages wellness. But I feel like all music in general, for me, I'll only speak for myself, but if I'm going to make music with the intent to share it, it's very important that I engage who's listening to it, not in such a way that I'm catering or trying to change who I am in order for them to like it. But I feel like it's so important to have that concern and that interest in mind, where it's important to be yourself when you meet people or when you spend time with your friends, but it's as important, if not more, to listen more than you talk and sort of engage with the person. The receiver of the art comes first for me, not in the way that what they think dwarfs my expression, but their value is more than what's going on in my head. If I'm going to share it, it has to be worth sharing with them. But for me, for the rest of my life, if I'm going to create art to share, it's very important that part of its DNA is that it's meant to be received. And I want people to feel that.
Right.
I want them to feel that it's made for them, or people or animals. I want whoever hears it to feel like, oh, this is for me.
Right.
This is a very genuine personal thing that this person made, but it's made for me. And that's very important to me.
Awesome. But I gotta ask, tell me more about this residency. So what is it like to be a composer in residence for a veterinary hospital?
It was amazing. So I was there for a little more than a month, and what I would do is every day I would go into the school. They gave me an office, and I would go to the office, and all the doctors, Sandy, my friend who the brainchild of this whole thing. She was so brilliant in the way that she approached this because no one had done this before. So she, created this whole structure of, we don't know what's going to happen, but let's try this.
Sure.
So one of her amazing ideas was, as soon as I got there, or before I got there, she had sent out an email to all the doctors at the veterinary school and the hospital, because it's a teaching hospital as well. And she said, this composer is coming. Here's his website if you want to look at it. Anyone who's interested, it would be great to, get a one-on-one conversation so you can meet him. He can ask you questions if you have the time. And that was really amazing of her to think of that, because I got to meet the people who were curious about what was happening. And I got to stay out of the way of people who maybe would rather not,
Right.
And no, I took absolutely no offense to that, but it might not have been of interest to people. It was kind of a strange move. So the people who were interested in it, I gave them my cell phone number. And then I had this office, and I would go up to the office and, write out some stuff, practice and just be available. And then I would get a text from doctors saying hey, I'm in this wing. Do you want to come try playing music for this patient? So that's how I wrote the music. I would spend all day just kind of bouncing around the hospital, spending time with some animals and doctors and asking questions. And then when I started getting ideas, I would go down and play for some of the patients. And it was a life-changing experience. Mm-hmm. So it was really amazing. And like I said, I didn't even really know how to approach this at first. So I didn't play for the first couple of days. I just hung out, like just spent time with people, listened to the doctors, spent time with the patients, just saw what they were doing. And then I would think about it, and I would go back to the place I was staying, and I would do some composing, or I would do it in the morning when I got to the office. So we were all just kind of flying by the seat of our pants and didn't know exactly what was going on. But once we got in a rhythm of it, there were certain doctors that really took to it. So I would start spending time with the doctors who were really interested in developing it. And it became a really nice project that a lot of people started using on their own pets. Because when the album was released, it was on Spotify and everything. Still is. It was released on Destiny Records. So people had access to it. They either bought it from the label or found it on streaming, and they would play it for their pets. I started getting like videos from people like, oh, like my dog really loves this one, or my cat loves when I hear this. So it was really amazing.
Well, I love the idea. I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's just a very innovative idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you always hear, you hear, I don't know how much you're doing it. I do know some programs that like go into hospitals and, instrumentalists and musicians go and perform, for people who are ill and stuff like that. And you always hear positive stuff,
Yeah.
This is a little bit different.
Yeah, I think the main difference of it was that, and this is what I'm so grateful to Sandy Sarr for, is she specifically asked me to do this because of what we were talking about, because of trying to translate intention musically. That this wasn't just about bringing music into the hospital, which has happened before. This was about crafting specific music for a specific purpose.
Right.
Music that only exists to promote and encourage wellness on an interspecies level. But that makes it different than, somebody bringing a string quartet into a hospital and playing beautiful, pieces by Beethoven or something.
Right.
Which is also amazing and also has very much wellness-oriented properties. But
you're taking away that conversation, sort of connection part of it.
Yeah, this is more about, this was created, for you.
Yeah.
Like looking at the animals and the doctors, this is your music.
And the other interesting thing about it is, the recipient doesn't have like a common language base.
No. Yeah.
Right. The language is the sound.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what was interesting from the observations that seemed so contextual, because it in place of language, the music was there. There was another situation, there was a dog, I still remember her name, Reika. I think she was a Rottweiler or a larger dog. A dog that you don't want to mess with. But Reika was in the integrative medicine department, which is where I spent most of my time. That department is amazing. It's run by two women who were incredible doctors with dual doctorates in Eastern and Western medicine. So they use a combination of traditional Chinese medicine and Western techniques. And they were very into the idea of trying to see what would happen with the music. So one time there was Reika was coming in and they wanted to give her an acupuncture treatment, but if I remember right, Reika had joint problems, so was in extreme pain, very agitated, and again a large dog. You don't want to be around an agitated, massive dog. So they kept trying to give it a shot of B12, a muscle relaxer. And every time the needle would just get close, Reika would freak out. And so they called me up in the office and do you want to try playing the music? So I came down and they left the room and Reika was just kind of walking in circles. So I started playing some of the music and eventually Reika sat down, went down on one side and just knocked out, went to sleep. Yeah. And in the course of about 5 minutes. So I kept playing the music. The doctors came back in and they were able to wake the dog up and put 20 acupuncture needles in the dog without any resistance. So that was one of the other situations where when I was talking to the doctors afterwards, there was something contextual about the music that clarified, even though the needle hurts, it's helping you. Because that seemed to be the breakdown that wasn't getting through.
Right.
Like she was not connecting it, that people were trying to help her. All she was experiencing was more pain.
Right.
So it seemed that maybe music provided some kind of context and put her in a space where she knew that she was being helped. Just putting on pleasant music versus music created with intention, I feel like the intention changes what happens with that music.
Sure.
That it's not just it's not just gentle, quiet music. It's music intentionally created that has a different effect on the receiver, whether they're human or not.
Right.
So that was kind of what we were exploring and working with. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
So, and where do we get this?
Easily ordered online or through my website. But
Your website is?
website is charlierauh.com. Charlie spelled IERAUH, all one word, .com.
So you said it's all been performed before. So the pieces that you played, those were what?
So what I did today was sort of a glimpse into what I do at my home studio. When I'm working on music or practicing music, I'll just kind of allow myself to wander around and improvise and find my way to the next one.
Well, thank you for wandering down here.
Always a pleasure, sir.
That come out okay?
Yeah, that sounded awesome.
Nice.
Play something else, man.
Okay. Let's see which ones.